Okay, welcome to the third lecture of this class. Before we get started, I'd like to give a very brief summary or review to our former lecture. In our former lecture, David Hume claims that reason or understanding is perfectly inert, which only functions in the world of ideas, and they can never motivate us to real action. For the same reason that understanding or reason have nothing to do with our action. Um, in his opinion, vice and virtue are thus similar to the colors and the sounds. So colors and sounds are just perceptions in our mind. So vice and virtue are similar to colors and sounds. They are just sentiments in our mind. After all these analyses, he eventually separated our human perception into two spheres. One sphere is the sphere of facts, and the other is the sphere of values. And as far as we can know that facts belong to sciences, okay, and values belong to moral philosophy. Um, so this is a very quick review for Hume's sentimentalist position. And for today, we're going to learn lecture 3, morality and rational self-interest. So once you see the topic here, you might recall that when we introduced the 4 fundamental approaches to the foundation of morality in lecture 2, namely we mentioned rationalist approach and also divine revelation approach and conscience approach and sentimentalist approach. So very briefly, I bridged over self-interest with rationalist. In today's material, Baruch Brody he focuses on relations between morality and self-interest. He reviews some important argument in the past history of philosophy regarding this issue, and he stated his position at the end. In his writing, he talks a lot about self-interest. You will understand his argument goes forth and goes back several rounds. You might consider that he probably defends rationalist position. However, towards the end of his writing, you will see a very big surprise. The author, Baruch Brody, he is the founder and the former director of the Center for Medical Ethics and Healthy Policy at the Baylor College of Medicine. He was also an internationally recognized American expert in the field of medical ethics and bioethics. Very often, medical ethics and bioethics share common topics a lot. They are sub-discipline of applied ethics. He wrote some foundational books and articles in these two fields, which we can see on the right side of this slide. For example, identity and essence, life and death decision making. In this book, published in 1987, he combines his clinical experiences and also case studies to examine the practical application of moral theory in clinical decision making. And also there are some other books here, for example, ethical issues in drug testing, approval, and pricing, and also the ethics of biomedical research. Those books contribute a lot to the field of bioethics and medical ethics, which make bioethics a very prosperous research field in moral philosophy. For today's lecture, the main question we're going to ask, does morality conflict with self-interest or not? So after today's lecture, you should be able to answer this question with a yes or no. And you should be able to present your own reason for your answer or for your position. So that is the purpose of today's class. In order to answer the question here, broadly starts with some examples. Some examples seem to be based on self-interest, but with serious consequences, particularly moral consequences. First example is about cheating on an exam. Some students believe that it is possible to get a higher grade by cheating, and a good grade seems to be their self-interest. The second example is about marital infidelity. Some people found that they can be unfaithful to their spouse and obtain pleasure from an extramarital relationship. The immediate pleasures seem to be their self-interest here. In the third case, many parents, that is a scenario when they try to teach their children some moral lessons. Very likely they will say, you'd better work hard and go to a college. Otherwise, you couldn't find a good job and you probably live without happiness. So in the third case, a good job seems to be, or live happily seems to be the self-interest of children. So from all those three cases, we can analyze right now. So it seems to be reasonable for us to consider that self-interest can either causes us to make a wrong decision, such as cheating, or a right decision, such as study very hard. So if self-interest can causes us to act either way, so it doesn't mean anything to us, right? So for those people who really want to defend the self-interest theory, they will analyze it to a further level. They insist that in all those three cases, okay, particularly in the former two cases here, the real self-interest is not a higher, for example, higher grade or the immediate pleasures, but the real interest is to avoid punishment. In the first case, we do not want to be caught while we're cheating, right? So because we do not want to be caught, we decide not to cheat, okay? And in the second example here, because we do not want to suffer from the long-range consequences of unfaithful marriage. That means we do not want to suffer from the psychological effects of this cheating in the marriage relationship. Okay, so we want to avoid this punishment. We want to avoid this mental suffering. That's why we decided not to conduct any unfeasible behavior in our marriage relationship. So after that, you can see, okay, now all those three cases here seem to claim self-interest can cause us to make the right decision. And for Brady, he even goes further to clarify that there are two types of punishment. One is from the psychological effects. We do not want to suffer from the internal pangs of conscience after we did something wrong. The other type of punishment is divine retribution. According to some religious moralists, we should not do wrong even if we can get away from being caught, or even we do not feel any internal pangs of the conscience, because God will always know about what we are doing. God will punish us. If not right now, maybe later. If not in this life, maybe in the after life. Okay, so now the question would be whether these two punishments are sufficient or insufficient for us to make a certain basis for doing the right actions. Okay, so for this question, I'm going to leave to the class, and I suggest you read the rest part of the first stage of the writing here to find your own answer. And in the next part, I'm going to introduce a very traditional argument in the rationalist position.